There will never be a story of forgiveness. Chapter 4. Provoked to violence. Mama made sure we went to church on Sundays. Daddy would even go with us. What a pretty family picture that should have been. It was hard to focus on God, though. The crazy antics of Pentecostal church people and thoughts of family conflicts fought for my attention. The car would be crowded with me, Bobby, Bunny, Randy, and Marty, which made for a rowdy, uncomfortable ride. I suffered from motion sickness whenever I traveled in the car. For this specific reason, I hated the journey to church and Daddy's Oldsmobile. While everyone was either laughing or complaining, I would be trying to keep my breakfast down. On the way to church one Sunday, I vomited all over my good church clothes. Mama insisted Daddy take me back home so she could clean me up. He fussed at me in his usual angry tone. He was holding me accountable for getting nauseous, which was obviously beyond my control. He begrudgingly turned the car around and drove us home. Mama and I went into the house. She got me cleaned up and into a new church outfit. I climbed back into my spot in the back seat and Mama got in the front. As we drove along, Daddy began threatening to whip me if I got sick again, as if I could restrain an agitated stomach. Mama defended me. As she was explaining to him that it wasn't my fault, he hit her in the face with his open hand right there on the road to church. I sat in silence, anxious and feeling guilty for him hitting Mama. Everyone in the car was silent for the rest of the ride. Daddy pulled up to the church, parked the car, and ordered us all to get out and get on into the service. We then walked through the doors of the church as a family and sat down in the sanctuary. Mama clapped her hands, got her shout on, said amen to the scriptures the preacher quoted, and sang like an angel. Daddy seemed to enjoy the service too, like nothing had happened. I sat there all mixed up inside. God had seen what had just happened. He knew what kind of man Daddy was. He saw everything that went on under Daddy's roof, yet he never stepped in to make things right. But the Almighty who controlled everything, why didn't he stop Daddy? And why did the Bible command that I honor such a man? That became a pressing question in my mind. God was God, and it wasn't within my privilege to ask why things were the way they were, I supposed. It was just my responsibility to obey. In my situation, that didn't seem fair. Daddy had a lot of keys. They were important to him in connection with his job as a truck driver. I was fascinated with all the keys he had on his keychain. He left them laying out one day where I could see and reach them. I decided to take them to school with me to impress my friends. I jangled them in my pocket. I showed them off to classmates by throwing them into the air and catching them on their way down. I was the center of attention for the whole day because all the boys my age felt the same way about keys. The excitement wore off by lunchtime. By the time the last bell rang, I completely forgot I even had the keys with me. Upon arriving home from school that day, Mama warned Bobby, Randy, and me not to draw any attention to ourselves from Daddy because he was in a very bad mood. She explained that his keys were missing and he was extremely frustrated, having searched extensively without finding them. I suddenly remembered I had the keys. Anxious thoughts filled my mind. I didn't know what to do. Daddy beating me for little or nothing at all was part of the regular routine. I was panicking because I knew this was a big thing. No one was aware I had the keys. I waited around a few moments for everyone to go on about their business, and then I snuck into the living room and placed the keys on the mantel. I hoped it would seem like they had been there all along. My heart was pounding with the fear of being found out. Shortly after, Mama discovered the keys. She presented them to Daddy with joy, explaining he must have overlooked them on the fireplace. He took the keys from her and then stood motionless for a moment as he thought. Daddy wasn't a stupid man. He had searched the entire house thoroughly, including that mantel. He knew the keys hadn't been there. One of you had my keys, he said. Speaking to me and my brothers, he was certain one of us had placed the keys on the mantel when we got home from school. Who had my keys, he roared. Who took my keys and put them back just now? Bobby and Randy cried out, Not me, Daddy. I realized I better join in so I didn't look suspicious, so I also said, Not me, Daddy. Daddy had asked in an attempt to give the guilty child an opportunity to spare the rest of us from a beating. He had already offended to begin with he was already offended to begin with that one of us had played on his intelligence by putting the keys back, and now he knew one of us was lying. His solution was to whip us all until someone confessed or until we lay half dead. He told us all to take our clothes off. He was determined to deal with each of us until the key thief confessed. It happened that I was first in line. Daddy was strong and hit hard. He struck me forcefully with his leather belt several times. Those lashes felt like lightning striking my bare skin. I couldn't take it, and I screamed out the truth. "I did it, Daddy. I took your keys." I was optimistic that admitting my wrong would bring the beating to an end, but Daddy wanted more than the truth. I had highly offended him by trying to trick him, and he was going to teach everyone in the house a lesson through me. The whipping only got worse. Daddy beat me extremely badly that day, striking me over and over again with his belt. It seemed like the assault was never going to end. When he finally finished, he shoved me behind the couch. My body fell like a rag doll. He stormed into the kitchen and came back with a table salt. He began sprinkling salt into my open wounds. It felt like my veins were on fire. I screamed, "Daddy," but there was no compassion in him for me. My crying became a series of high-pitched screams at that point. He yelled out to Mama that she better leave me right there. I laid there for what seemed like an eternity, naked and bruised with open sores all over my body. When my shrill screams of pain finally changed to a quiet whimper, I wondered where my help was. I sat right there behind the couch, too ashamed to reveal myself. I felt like I'd brought it on myself. No one, not even Mama, had come to see about me. We all feared Daddy, so no one dared oppose him unless they wanted a few blows of their own. That was the worst beating I'd ever gotten from Daddy. I never forgot it. This was the man I was supposed to look to for guidance, and all he ever did was beat me. I was a naughty child, but the weight of his punishments couldn't redirect me. He was a man of abuse, not discipline. There was a particular traumatic event that took place when I was 2, of which details will remain untold out of respect for my father. I only mention it here to point out the accuracy of my memory and my inability to let go of things I didn't want to hold on to. I remember crying very loudly afterwards. When I asked Mama in later years about the incident, she was amazed at the great distance my mind was able to backtrack. I couldn't laugh about that incident, not at any time that it would come back to me. It always made me feel horrible. It seemed my mind would always pull it out of the old bag I tucked it away in, reminding me that I had a cruel, unusual father and that I wasn't lovable. Daddy had colored that period of his life completely black. That was his way of dealing with himself as an abuser, to simply say, "I never did that," or "I don't remember that, son." But the truth was he did do bad things to me. I remembered it all and couldn't forget it no matter how hard I tried. I was merely an outgrowth of whatever was in Daddy and Mama's hearts. Maybe they hated me what they couldn't see, and maybe they hated in me what they couldn't see in themselves. Repeated whippings couldn't remove the evil spirit that worked in me, compelling me to do wrong. I felt like Daddy should have attempted to know me in order to deal with me in a more sensitive manner. His neglect of love for me made me break the rules even more and push me over the edge to despise him. I sought ways to escape the immense physical and emotional pain of childhood. I exaggerated stories to make situations amusing, and I told lies instead of truth for fear of rejection. There was a land of fantasy I ran to in my mind where Daddy didn't exist. When I escaped to that imagined world within, every need was met and no one was hurting me because he wasn't there. I misused the power of my imagination to create mental images that weren't real, which caused a twisted view of reality and prevented me from dealing with my true feelings. I used to envision Daddy dead. I fantasized about it for so long that it pushed its way into conscious manifestation. I was impulsive, and before I knew it, the words were out of my mouth. I told teachers and classmates one day that Daddy had died. The thought comforted me. My teachers pitied me. I didn't stop to think my story through to an end result. That evening, school officials felt it was their duty to follow up with a home visit based upon what I had said. I sat in the family room at home watching television with Daddy, Bobby, Randy, and Marty. Mama, who was pregnant with Elle, answered a knock at the door. She was surprised to see school personnel. They greeted her with flowers and condolences for her loss. Mama was puzzled by their sentiments of grief. She asked what was going on. They explained to her that her son, Tommy, had told them earlier that day of Daddy's death. They went on to tell her they were there to see if there was anything they could do for the family. Mama didn't know what to say. She led them into the family room where Daddy sat with us kids. She asked why I had told such a lie. I didn't answer. Daddy laughed at the awkward situation, stating that I was always saying something odd to get attention. To my surprise, I didn't get punished for my lie that day. It may have seemed like a harmless story, but had any of those teachers dug deep enough into my words or occasionally taken a look at the bruised body underneath my clothes, they would have known I wasn't just creating fairy tales. I felt that if Daddy were out of the picture, things would be better for me, Mama, and my brothers and sisters. My relationship with Daddy may have been agonizing, but Bobby experienced the full intensity of Daddy's wrath. My heart tended to focus on its own bitterness, but to step back and compare my plight with Bobby's, Bobby definitely had it worse. Torture is the most fitting term that comes to mind when I attempt to sum up Daddy's treatment of my big brother. As I got older, I observed the gradual change in Bobby from being my brother to being another form of Daddy. He yelled and was frequently enraged to the point of shaking in tears. He complained the majority of the time and vented his discontentment verbally to everyone around him. He didn't even like fist fighting. His mouth was a greater weapon to him. When he did reach a physical level of violence, which wasn't often, it was always backed by reason. He wasn't known for altercation without a cause. He really just wanted to be left alone. I came to understand the revenge that was spilling over in Bobby's heart.